Today you've been asked to make some sketches of some Mayan artifacts for art. So what I'm going to do for you today is I'm going to do an example just to give you an idea and to help you to get started. So in front of me I've got the PDF open that I sent to you in class dojo, and I'm going to concentrate on the image of the stone head. Now to start, I'm going to start off by doing an outline and doing the rough shapes that I can see on that stone head. So I'm going to start with a kind of egg shape. Now I'm doing these lines quite sketchy. I'm also doing them really lightly because these are just my guidelines. So that is the rough shape of the stone head that I can see in front of me. I'm not going to put in any fine details just yet. I'm just looking at the shapes that I can see. So about halfway down here, I know that I've got the eyes. And there's the ear shapes that are coming out on either side in 3 circular shapes like so. We've also got a pattern that's going to come across here, and the cheekbones and the end of the nose come up like so, and the mouth is going to be here. So from these guidelines, I'm going to know where to position everything on my sketch. So what I'm going to do now I've got these guidelines in, I'm going to start putting some of the details in. And I'm going to start by looking at the top, and I'm going to work my way down. Now if I look at the top of the head shape, it's got some pattern that comes all the way down like this to the ears. And it is slightly uneven, so I'm not going to worry if my lines are a bit wobbly. We've got a similar pattern that comes across the crown of the head here, and it's made up of a series of rectangles. So I'm just going to put a extra guideline in so I know where to put my rectangles. So I'm going to start putting those in like so. Pencil lines can be a bit heavier now because there's less chance of me making a mistake because I've got those initial guidelines in that I did right at the start. Okay, now I'm working my way down mostly so that my hand doesn't smudge my drawings. Now if I work down to the next part, there's a circular shape in the middle of the head here that looks a little bit like a target. So I'm going to pop that in next. The next part, we have got the eyebrows. That's just an outline that comes around like that. It also provides us with a socket in which to put our eyes. So I'm going to start and put the eyes in. And I'm taking it on step by step. I'm not trying to draw everything at once. I'm just working my way down, looking at what shapes I've got. So we've got the eye shape, the actual circular eye shape that comes under here. Actually comes around like that. So I'm looking at all the line work that's carved into the stone head. I'm just representing those lines using my pencil. Sometimes you'll notice that I use quite a light line first of all, That's just to make sure that I get the shape right. And if it's done lightly, it means I can easily rub it out if I need to and I've made a mistake. So now you can see it's starting to take shape. It's starting to look more like the stone head that's in the picture. We've also got, if I look really closely, if I zoom in on the picture a little bit more, I can also see that there's a pattern that comes underneath each eye, like so. Now, because this is an ancient artifact, there are parts missing, so the nose on this artifact is actually missing. It seems to have crumbled away, so I'm just putting the shapes that I can see in there. And the cheekbone, the shadow from the cheekbone comes up like so. Right, I'm going to move down further now and I'm going to look at the mouth. So this is roughly where the mouth, the centre of the mouth is, but we've got the lips that come round and they don't go right to the edge of the stone face. They come round like that. Now, that looks a bit strange at the moment, but I have got to put teeth in here. So I'm going to put the circular pattern that's at the corner of each side of the mouth. Mayans seem to use lots of pattern in the carvings. And we've got the outside of the lips like so. Now we've got that, you can see that there's a row of teeth. Now I'm looking at this carving and you can't actually see lower teeth in the sculpture, but you can see upper teeth. So those are the main features of the face I've got at the moment. I'm not going to put any shading or anything in yet. I'm going to save that till later. What I am going to concentrate on is I'm going to concentrate on these ears that are in the image here. And I'm going to, because it's symmetrical, I'm going to do each one or each part at a time. So I'm going to start off with the upper ear, which isn't a perfect circle. It's more of part of a circle, but we do have a circular shape up here and up here. And some lines that come down like so. And this part actually comes out more this shape. I'm going to do the same on this side. So I can still use those circles as a guideline, but it's more of a curved rectangular shape. And inside that shape, we've got more stone circles, which I'll put in on either side like this. So it stays more or less symmetrical. And down here, we're going to follow that circle guideline because the shape of the bottom of the ears actually comes out like this. I'm just going to join that up with the neck that seems to come out, and from that comes the chin. So now I've got those darker lines in, I'm just very lightly going to use the rubber and rub out some of those guidelines that I don't need anymore. Don't worry if you can't rub them all out, because your shading will probably cover most of them. Just going to rub out some of the more obvious ones that I don't need. Just be careful not to rub some of your main lines out. So, as I said, I've got the main shape and the main details on there now. Now I'm going to think about adding a little bit of shading. I'm not going to want to shade the whole sculpture sketch in, I'm just going to want to add elements of light and shade to show the texture of the stone. So again, starting at the top, I'm going to add some darker patches around here, like so. Notice how I'm not colouring the whole head in, I'm just adding some definition to these uneven edges around the top of the head. Now for these almost like tooth-like shapes, I'm going to use the same idea. And if I look in the picture, those are fairly dark compared to these. So I am going to make these a little bit darker. And because they're fairly small, I'm going to colour each one in individually. Just taking my time with this and using my pencil at different pressures. So around the edge, I'm using more pressure to make it darker. And then as I shade out, I just take the pressure gradually off the pencil. That means that you create almost a light and dark effect. It just means that the carving that you can see in the photograph, you're representing that through your drawing. You're also showing where the light's falling on the photograph as well. So moving on to the target part, if you look in the photograph, it's definitely darker around this bottom edge. So I'm going to add a darker section here, but I don't actually want it to look stripy. I'm not going to leave it in as a dark stripe like that. I'm going to, again, take a little bit of pressure off my pencil and gradually make it lighter. Just to give the impression that there's more of a shadow over this side than there is over this side. And I'm going to do the same with the centre as well. But again, not quite as much. Okay. Still want to be able to see the carving there. Okay, so this bit is actually quite a light line in the photograph. So I'm going to use some really light shading here. So I still want to give the impression of that line, but I'm just making it a little more stone-like. Because as you know, the Mayans did a lot of their artwork with stone, and we want to try and represent that in our drawings. Now underneath the eye here, we want to make it look like the eye socket, and in the photograph this part is probably the darkest part, so we're going to make that the darkest part in our drawings as well. So This is the heaviest I'm probably going to use my pencil in one big block. Notice how I go over the top of my shading so that I don't get lots of pencil lines in it. We don't want it to look all full of lines like this here. We want it to look smooth. So that sometimes means going over your shading more than once. So as I said, that's the darkest part of this Mayan stone head done. So we're just going to add in these lines here. I'm going to keep this part of the eye really quite light. And we're just going to add a bit of darker shading around the eye here. And do the same here on the other side. So remember what I said about sometimes going over that shading more than once. When you do go over your shading, it's not necessarily about making it darker, so you want to keep about the same pressure on your drawing there. So I want to add this definition, so I'm going to make it a bit darker around the edges. And do the same on this side. For the centre, I'm going to go back to fairly light again. There we go. So I'm going to shade carefully around here. And I'm going to keep shading until the whole thing is done. I'm going to pause the video and then you can come back and see the finished result. Okay, so here's the finished sketch with all the shading in place. Now, as you can see, some darker parts have been used to show the outline of where patterns or shapes are carved into the sculpture. It's also to show shadow as well. You might notice that the top of the head is quite light and it gradually starts getting darker as it works its way down. That's because when you look at the photo, the light focuses more towards the top of the head, and this is where all the shadow is being cast. I've purposely done the chin lighter to show that the chin is in front of the neck, and the neck is quite dark because the shadow from the head is being cast over onto the neck. And that's the sort of thing that you need to be aware of when you're doing a pencil sketch. Now, you're only working in grey if you're doing a pencil sketch, so you need to make sure that you're using different pressures to create different shades of grey, and then that you can then start to show your pattern work, your line work, and your light and your shade. Now, in your task, you've been asked to do a series of sketches, and this is the photograph that you've got on Class Dojo. I'm just going to talk you through parts of it because this is where you can actually experiment with different techniques. So for this one, I zoomed in on some pattern work in one of the Aztec carvings, and I just picked out a face that I found particularly interesting. And I made sure that using my pencil, I tried to show the different textures in the carvings. So I used small little circles to show almost a bobbly effect in the stonework here. And I use again my light and my dark shading to show where the line work is. Over here and over here, I've got some Mayan script that I just zoomed in and copied. And again, I used part of a mural here for this head, and the same for this skull here. This one was more of an observational piece. I took the image of one of the stone slabs and I tried to make an observational drawing. I added a bit of colour and put the trees, or tried to represent the trees in the background here with the green and the brown ground. Over here, I used some of the pattern work in the same mural as this one, but I decided to add some of my own Mayan colours as well. And over here I just had a little gap, and I thought I saw a representation in one of the patterns of maybe a caiman or a lizard, so I added that in to fill in that space. Now hopefully that should help you with your task today. Remember what I said, take your time while you're doing it. Drawing does take time, and the best pieces of artwork usually take longer, so there's no rush to get them done and uploaded. Just work at your own pace and have a go at experimenting. If one thing doesn't work out, then you can always move on to the next. Good luck, and we're looking forward to seeing what you do.